Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. That's much better. Thank you very much. Welcome to the 2018 MassBio Policy Leadership Breakfast. This annual event is an opportunity for representatives from the local life sciences industry to come together with policymakers, patient advocates, healthcare providers, and disease foundations to discuss how collectively we can work together to improve the lives of sick people. The reason this room is full every year is because we all understand that when we work together with government, anything is possible. And over the last 10 plus years, government has been a true partner to the life sciences industry and therefore to patients, not only here, but for the world. This theme runs through the program today. Both panels explore different ways that government impacts how patients gain access to new medicines. But before I go any further, I want to recognize and thank the elected officials and their staff, especially the staff, who are here this morning, both from the State House, City Hall, and Congress. So how about a big round of applause for all of the elected officials and staff members? You know, I want to give special recognition to both Chairman Joe Wagner and Senator Karen Spilker, who co-chair the Biotech Legislative Caucus. Thank you for your continued leadership. You know, I'd like to start off by thanking all the members of the Senate. So could any senators that are here in the room with us please stand up? There we go. How about a big round of applause for Senator Rodericks and Bonacore? Thank you. How about members of the House? How about state reps? Could you guys stand up? Look at that. Everybody knows that you have to be extremely intelligent and good-looking to be a member of the House of Representatives. I was asked to leave politely. All right, now most importantly, how about the staff? All the staffers, if you're a staff, whether it's in state government, city government, town government, or federal government, stand up. I know that all the members, all the House members and all the Senate members, man, we appreciate what it is that you guys do. You know, and I want to thank you all for attending today. For all the elected officials, we'd ask that you come up to the stage at the end of the program, too. We're going to do a big picture that's suitable for social media if you want to. But I also want to give a special shout out to our dear friend and our point of government, our point of contact in government, the CEO of the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center, Mr. Travis McCready. Travis, please stand up. And you can tell when he stands up. Additionally, a big thank you to the MassBio member companies who are here this morning. You play an incredibly important role educating policymakers about the impact that your company has on patients, on the healthcare system, and on the economy. So thank you for that. And this morning would not be possible if it weren't for the support from such a wonderful list of sponsors. So I'd like to thank Alexion, Alkermes, Amgen, Biogen, Bio, Bluebird, BMS, EMD Serono, Fisher Scientific, Ipsen, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Shire, and Synovian. So how about a large round of applause for our sponsors, ladies and gentlemen? You know, and last but not least, it's so important that we thank the members of the MassBio Board of Directors who have joined us today, and I want to thank them here publicly for all the work that they do year-round in guiding MassBio and making sure that we continue to make life sciences a priority here in Massachusetts. How about all the MassBio board members that are here? Please stand up to be recognized. And I assure you, during contract renewal time, you are my favorite people in the room. So thank you for your wonderful leadership. Right now, the life sciences industry is thriving. and Massachusetts is leading the way. We are, without a doubt, the best place in the world for biotech. But that has not always been the case, and it certainly did not happen by chance. 10 years ago, when I first started at MassBio, Massachusetts' unique mix of academic medical centers, universities, and biotech companies made us one of the better places for life science innovation in the United States of America. These core components put us ahead of most, but there was a lot of serious competition from other clusters. Since then, the industry in Massachusetts has flourished, and what put us on top was government stepping in and actively supporting the growth of the life sciences, largely through the passage of the Life Science Initiative in 2008. The data backs this up. Over the last 10 years, total biopharma workforce grew by 28% and now totals over 66,000 people statewide. More than 11 million square feet of commercial lab space has been built in Massachusetts in the last 10 years, a 68% increase, and it's all full. Venture capital investments in biopharma has grown 322%, from $686 million in 2007 to $2.9 billion in 2016, and it's growing. And this success is reflected at MassBio. Our membership has nearly doubled from close to 600 members in 2008 to close to 1,100 members strong right now. Moreover, the Life Sciences Initiative's various incentives and programs have significantly grown the industry outside of Cambridge. Worcester, on its own, can be one of the bigger hubs for life sciences in the country. How about a big round of applause for Kevin O'Sullivan here, who's from MBI, our partner. Kevin, amazing to work with. Worcester is on fire. Biomanufacturing facilities continue to open across the state in places like Norwood, Norton, Andover, Billerica, and the list goes on. There's no doubt that this level of growth would not have happened if the Life Science Initiative was not passed. With that 10-year, $1 billion program set to expire this year, our second panel today explores the impact the original initiative had and why the state needs to implement the next phase as proposed by Governor Baker and his administration. Our first panel focuses back on the patient. And ironically, the success of our industry and continued approval of new breakthrough medicines are creating more access issues for sick people. Step therapy, specialty tiers, and non-medical switching, among other things, are causing serious problems for patients who are trying to access the treatments that work for them. Yet we believe these restrictions created by insurers as a method to reduce costs are counterproductive and can actually increase costs to the healthcare system. In a few minutes, you'll hear from a panel of great patient advocates who believe that government should step in and ensure patients get the therapies that they need without interference from insurers. You'll hear from them why these changes could also save the healthcare system money. But before we get to the first panel, I want to introduce Joanne Duncan, who is the president of the Membership and Business Operations Division at Bio down in Washington, D.C. Joanne has come up with several other members of the Bio team to talk about the 2018 Bio International Convention, which is back in Boston this year, and we are wicked excited, Joanne, to have Bio back in Boston. It's going to be the best one ever. So how about putting your hands together for Joanne Duncan? Big thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Bob. Wow, that's a lot of energy, and I love it. We're thrilled to be here. This is such a great turnout. I'm so impressed. I looked around, I met a few people, talked to a few of the steering committee members. So yes, Bio, the convention, our theme this year is Make History. We're coming back after 6 years. We've not been back to Boston, this enormous, wonderful ecosystem of biotech and life science. We will be bringing the convention back in 2018. I'm very excited about it. June 4th through 7th, early June, in conjunction with BIO's 25th anniversary, as well as working with MassBio, so with Bob and his team, and we're enjoying that as well. Let me give you a couple quick statistics. I don't know who in this room has been to the convention or not. Over 16,000 attendees. We're going to knock that out of the park this year, aren't we, Bob? We're looking at, Bob quoted he wanted 22,000 people, so game on. I say bring it on. And I'm going to give you sort of the large picture here of what it is, this ecosystem that we're dropping into. This convention itself is its own ecosystem. 74 countries attend, 48 states are represented. There are 1,800 exhibits on the exhibit floor. I love the Boston Convention Center in Seaport because you look down onto that space and you just see the activity. Embedded in the space itself, we have our business forum, which is where the partnering meetings take place. You'll see on this slide that's 41,400 partnering meetings that took place. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically speed dating for BD and investors to get together. So embedded in the floor at the convention center, in amongst all the hubbub, are these events that go on, these one-on-one partnering meetings, which are very productive and very helpful for the industry. I'm going to talk in a few minutes a little bit more about the education component. There are 145 sessions and 18 tracks that we put on with 800 speakers. And I know that some of you in this room, if I don't recognize you at this point, I know some of you are speakers, some of you have submitted panels to speak. It's quite a big production. It's a wonderful program team that we have. I want to come back and talk about our international attendance. And some of these statistics are repeated, but 1/3, 33% of our attendees come from outside the United States. And you can see the list there of the top countries. Canada's always at the top, or pretty much at the top, and we're seeing a lot of fast growth in attendance from South Korea, United Kingdom, Japan, Germany, and China. So we're trying to make sure we continue to attract those attendees to the East Coast this year, because this is such the biotech hub. We want to make sure we have that attendance. The delegates that come in, the delegations that come in from these countries, one of the things they love, and I'll be meeting later today with some folks here in Cambridge, to do tours. They love to do tours of facilities and meet people at universities. They love that. So we're putting together a bunch of tours for them as well. And you can see how far out we get folks from different countries. The reasons to attend BIO is this is a quote from somebody, the place to meet everyone of importance in the industry. And it truly is. There's a variety, a breadth and depth of folks that are there. And the easy stuff, obviously, is networking and business development. Partnering, which I've mentioned, is really the hubbub of this. It's such an exciting opportunity. Company presentations and exhibits, innovation and technology. You really get to see the cutting edge. The exhibit floor is so fascinating with what companies come in with, and members show their cutting edge technology that's coming out. It's very exciting. And then obviously the educational programming. And I want to take a couple of minutes on the educational programming because I have an ask of this group about the convention. We're, again, excited to be in this ecosystem, not having been back in 6 years. There's a lot of change in the last 6 years. I'm preaching to the choir here on that. So we're excited to offer that opportunity to bring more people in. Last year at the convention in San Diego, the 3 top attended sessions weren't necessarily about business development, but there was trade and investment policies of the Trump administration, and that was essentially tied with the second one, which was innovation and partnerships in the U.S. DoD. So you're drawing a much broader group of people to come into this. Those two were tied almost neck and neck. I think there were one attendee difference. And then finally, every year we do E&Y does an annual report that shows the state of the biotech industry, breadth and depth of education that's offered to all attendees. The program itself this year, we're pulling it together. I've highlighted a few things. These tracks are being pulled out, but obviously we're having an opioid addiction track. There are 4 sessions right now planned that are going to be very engaging and certainly informative and what we need to be doing and discussing as an industry. Gene editing, we're right here at the hub of gene editing, and BIO represents, the Biotechnology Innovation Organization represents not only the health side, but we also represent the food and ag and the I&E side. And gene editing is a technology that certainly translates to all of those areas, transfers to all of those areas. Tax policy, always. We do a lot in tax policy. The regulatory affairs track this year, we're actually going to be offering an FDA town hall, which we haven't done in a couple years. CEDAR and CBER will representatives from CBER and CEDAR will be there. We also, of course, patient-focused drug development. The patient voice, patient involvement, patient panels are continually, and they're woven in and out of all of our activities because, as Bob indicated, that's really what we're here for. It's the patient and the patient voice. And finally, we have value, patient access, and reimbursement track. From a financial perspective, it's not necessarily about us, it's about what we can bring to your neck of the woods. We are estimating and projecting almost $34 million of an economic impact. We do this analysis at the end of each event. This does actually not include the food and beverage that you guys, when you go out and about and you take folks out and you host events, this is not included in that. So I believe that this will be a larger number at the end of the day, because that's we have our numbers in there, but we don't have what attendees will do at this point. We don't have an estimate for that yet. And finally, here's my ask, and I know you want to get back to your policy discussion, but what can you do? And this is why I'm here today, is we want you to attend, of course, but we want you to invite the government officials, both in this room and others, and the lawmakers to bring them to the International Convention. This is the largest biotech event globally. It's in your backyard. I actually say it's actually in your house. It's not even in your backyard because there's such a huge ecosystem. This provides lawmakers the opportunity to better understand the dynamics of the biotech ecosystem because everybody is there, from the exhibitors and on up. It's an opportunity to see how everybody works together. It also, in our mind, and I'm sure in your mind too, it helps them, an educated individual, lawmaker or not lawmaker, it really helps them create strong public policy in an environment that supports the work that we do. And we think the more educated people are, a variety, and we can provide that, the stronger public policy that we'll have for our industry. And of course, if available for certain candidates and public officials, there's complimentary registration. I know there's some requirements around that. So we can put together an agenda for you. We can work with you. So we have a table. Bio has a table. We're proud to be a host, Bob. This is a great event. We can work with you individually. We can work with your companies. We can work with lawmakers. We certainly continue to work with MassBio to put any type of an agenda together for you to bring your public officials to the Bio International Convention in June. Provide a variety of opportunities. We can customize it. We're more than happy to help you, because we do want to continue to make history in our industry, and by having strong public leaders, public policy, and attendees, I think we can all do this together. So thank you. I appreciate your time. Now you can get back to what you came for. But thank you, Bob. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you. It's been truly magnificent working with you and the team at Bio. I'm positive that this will be the best bio convention since the last time it was in Boston. And right? Come on, we all agree. After the program's complete, I encourage you all to go to the back table, go to the bio table in the back of the room to learn more. Before we move on to the next panel, I just want to recognize the majority leader of the House of Representatives, Mr. Ron Mariano, ladies and gentlemen. He's been a true stalwart supporter of the biopharma industry here in Massachusetts. We wouldn't be where we are today without your help, Mr. Leader. Now, I want to welcome our first panel to the stage, along with Martha Biebinger, Healthcare and General Assignment Reporter for WBUR, who will be moderating. Martha, please join me, and panelists, come on up. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. So great to be here. As the panelists get seated, we'll start with just a few opening remarks from them. I have some questions, and please be ready with yours about 20 minutes from now. So as you settle in there for a minute, Dana Marsh, perhaps we'll just jump right in with you.
Thank you, Martha.
Oh, we've got sorry. Make sure we get everybody's name tag right. Great.
Can people hear me?
I think so. Just go ahead and, yeah.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me here today. I'm
Everybody
Donna
at the
Mosh.
back can hear? Yeah, good.
Yes, I'm Donna Mosh from the Massachusetts Association for Mental Health. We are one of the oldest mental health policy and advocacy organizations in the country, founded here in Boston in 1913 by a number of civic and philanthropic and academic leaders. I just wanted to say that I am, on behalf of our constituents, immensely grateful to your community for the work that you've done over time to improve the care options for people who have behavioral health conditions. That is, people with mental illnesses and substance use conditions who need treatment, many of whom benefit from pharmaceutical interventions that some of your companies are providing. I'm looking forward to the discussion today because this topic of access to the best medication that is best fitting for a patient in need is a very important one in terms of the outcomes one can anticipate, both in the clinical status of the individual who's treated and in the cost of care.
Great, Richard.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rich Bazzillo. I'm the Executive Director of the New England Hemophilia Association. We are located in Dedham, Massachusetts. We were founded in 1957, so it makes us 61 years old. Our mission is to assist and advocate for people in New England living with hemophilia and other types of rare bleeding disorders. When our organization was formed in 1957, the life expectancy for someone with hemophilia was 27 years old. Because of companies like those that are here in this room, the life expectancy today is normal. And as we look ahead at what's to come, it's an exciting time for our community as we look at new advancements. And for those living with hemophilia, the challenges really come from the understanding of having a rare condition, of bleeding longer, not faster, and having IV infusions, not other types of medications. So what we really try to do is focus on the patient, the individualized care, and make sure that there's advocacy for those living throughout New England living with this rare condition.
Hi, my name is Terry Wilcox. I am the co-founder and executive director of Patients Rising, which is a national organization based in Washington, D.C. Patients Rising, we help overwhelmed patients living with chronic and life-threatening illnesses and their caregivers gain the clarity, confidence, and tools that they need to understand their healthcare access challenges, navigate an ever-increasing healthcare system, and ultimately help others to do the same through sharing their stories. Our vision is a world where no patient is deprived of access to the treatments they need when they need them. Now, Patients Rising Now, we also have a sister organization as our 501c4 policy and advocacy organization, establishing the collective voice for care access. And we're doing that by educating patient advocates on how to share their story, engaging them at the federal and state level on issues specifically related to the access challenges and regulatory hurdles patients are facing around the country, and activating them to make a difference. Collectively across both organizations, we represent the Voices of Value, which is one of our programs, for the authentic patient-lived experience with the ultimate goal that no one suffering from a chronic or life-threatening illnesses lacks the information they need to receive the care they deserve. Now, at Patients Rising, we have 3 distinct programs, which I'll just briefly tell you about since I've been given this 3 minutes. Thank you. This was most recently, we have Voices of Value Speak Up, which was a series of 12 events we did around the country, educating patients on a variety of topics related to access, innovation, and regulatory reforms. These events and live webcast help develop and create the content for our most recent program called Patients Rising University. Last year, we developed a 28-page ebook for patients, How to Be Your Own Best Advocate. And that is now launching into an online learning portal, which will launch with its first courses in Q2 of this year. And finally, our newest program in development is Patients Writing. And this is a transportation program we are hoping to pilot here in Boston or another city later this year. One of the access issues that comes up very often is transportation. And obviously through companies like Uber and Lyft, we have begun to address those issues, but we have found some flaws in those that we hope to help alleviate or eliminate with the development and implementation of this program. Thank you very much for inviting me here today.
Be interesting to see how all of that flows into the sort of ACO model, transportation for patients, yeah. But let's start with a little bit of the news of the day. Some of you probably heard the governor, Governor Charlie Baker, say in his State of the Union address last night that there'll be some additional money for mental health, community mental health in particular. And I wanted to ask you, Dana, that's 83, you said maybe closer to 90 million. What should people in this room understand about what that will mean in terms of access to care for mental health patients?
So as I understand it from preliminary briefings, and the more formal briefing is actually later this afternoon, so that the expanded funds to the Department of Mental Health, which is actually, as it's forecast, the largest increase the department's received in decades to its budget, is designed to provide more intensive clinical services to clients of the Department of Mental Health, particularly individuals who have more serious and disabling forms of mental illness, often co-occurring with other chronic health conditions. And so increasing the intensity of the clinical support for those individuals, and also providing more access to affordable housing, and an emphasis in the budget on the link between housing and health care as critical to ensuring the long-term stability and productivity of individuals with these conditions.
Great. Rich, you're certainly well aware that on Beacon Hill we have a lot of competing tensions around the costs of pharmaceuticals. And I believe that you've talked about making a savings proposition by eliminating something called step therapy. Would you like to sort of offer us the summary of what you might tell legislators about this tool that insurers use to try to be sure patients go to generics first often?
Sure. So in hemophilia care, there is no generics. We don't have that option. And when we look at those living with hemophilia, our numbers are not large. In New England, we're estimating that there's about 2,500 people living with the bleeding disorder. With hemophilia, it's about less than 1,000. In Massachusetts, we're looking at less than 750. So it's a very small number of those living with hemophilia. The costs associated with someone living with hemophilia easily can exceed $350,000 a year prophylactically. For those forming inhibitors, meaning that their body is forming an antibody to the factor, to the clotting factor that they need, it could be over $1 million. And these numbers are not exaggerated. I've seen patients that are well over $1 million. So when we talk about step therapy, really no one wins here, and patients are put in the middle of the situation that's requiring them to fail first. And really, I think we can argue here, what is the definition of failure? There really is no definition, especially for those living with hemophilia. A lot of our patients are on prophylaxis. There are studies that have shown that by taking the clotting factor through IV on a prophylactic base, depending on the patient, whether it's every other day, 3 times a week, twice a week, helps to prevent bleeds, which leads to quality of life issues. So no patient, if their provider is saying that they should be on X prescription, should be told that they have to go on another just because of cost or fail first there. And we've seen in our community, especially nationally, that this is hurting the quality of life. It's costing more money, and it's really putting patients in a position where their quality of life is going back to where we were.
But we know that insurers are under a lot of pressure to start to curb the rise in pharmaceutical growth spending, right? So Terry, for example, you have a 5-part patient declaration on your website, and one of them is making sure that insurers do their best to control spending. So what works in that? What works in that realm in terms of pharmaceuticals? Where's the right balance?
Well, one of the things that I always like to say, and as an organization, we work with all types of disease-specific organizations. So we are not an expert on any one disease type, but we've worked with everyone from the MS Society on various events and things like that. So we've seen it from a broad spectrum. And one of the things that we really know works, and that we believe patients need, is to be looked at as an individual. But to your point about the insurers, it really is true that around 70% or so of patients fit in the lane that follows the path of whatever it is they're trying to do, in many instances. But making an effort, a real true effort, to take this other 30 to 35% of patients and look at them as individuals and not delay their care. And that does ultimately help with spending. I mean, it does ultimately help curb spending costs by not having them go through treatments that they can't use, don't need, delays their quality of life and their life and their life in general.
So is that a way of saying, and I'll come back to the two of you on this same point if I could, that you need the right exceptions within each piece of legislation so that the other 30% are accounted for?
Right. Yeah, you need the right sort of path. And some insurers are doing this. You need the right sort of path to allocate for those patients that don't fit in the mold, that are the square peg trying to fit in the round hole. and do it effectively and efficiently so their care is not delayed and their treatment does not escalate in cost. I mean, of course, new biologics and all of these things are costing more, but they're costing a lot more if you're having to do, older treatments first and get sicker and stay in hospitals longer.
Right. So is that what you're looking for, Rich, is the right exceptions to step therapy or non-medical switching or the way we tier drugs and formularies?
I mean, in an ideal world, we wouldn't see these things at all. And I'll give you a quick example. I have hemophilia myself, and my brother has hemophilia. He's 2 years younger. We do not respond to the same medication that was prescribed to us. So we have to be on 2 separate types of clotting factor in order for our bodies to stop bleeding. And I think there, by medical definition of what we are genetic, we are brothers by the same parents, and I think that the definitions that are put forward does not fit for those with rare and other chronic conditions. It just doesn't work. I mean, we see oftentimes those living with severe hemophilia, by medical definition, that's less than 1% of clotting factor, act differently than someone with mild hemophilia, which is higher than 5% of clotting factor. Sometimes the mild hemophiliacs bleed like severes and severes bleed like mild, but from the medical definition, they have to fit, and that's what insurance companies are kind of looking at there.
Okay. Damn.
Yeah. As many as 25% of adults have a behavioral health condition in a lifetime, and 20% of children. And among those, a smaller percentage with severe and disabling conditions. At any time in Massachusetts, as many as several 100,000 adults have chronic and disabling mental illness, and about 70,000 children with serious emotional disturbance. Many of those individuals rely on medications to stabilize their condition. And like other drugs, not every psychiatric drug that makes its way through clinical trials is effective with the full population under test. In fact, sometimes it's 40 to 50% of the population. And so having people go through multiple tiers on medications when their physician or their own experience with treatment has indicated that a particular drug works for them is a setup for failure. And these failures not only impact the patient who may be symptomatic for far too long, and we know that long unaddressed symptomatology in psychotic disorders, for example, causes cognitive impairment and loss of function. These are huge risks that people face in having to go through multiple steps and failing at one drug after another. It also discourages future compliance and disrupts the bond between the treating physician and the patient, which is critical to long-term adherence to therapy. So the other risks that have been well documented in the research in the psychiatric area are that people, while they're going through this period of step therapy, if they are not able to hit the right medication at an early step, find themselves with more use of emergency services, more use of inpatient services, and problems in their other health conditions, their related chronic health conditions.
So give us a picture of where this movement is nationally. Is pulling back on step therapy one of the main sort of patient-first initiatives that's taking hold across the country? How does Massachusetts compare, then, with what else is going on? Do you want to start on that, Terry?
From a national perspective, I mean, there is a step therapy movement in several states. We're on coalitions in many, many states, and Massachusetts is obviously one of the leaders in that. It is a movement that's taking place across the country, and you're finding value frameworks and clinical pathways and other things that insurers and others are trying to implement, allocating for that, even in their formularies, like backing away from step therapy as a means to treat patients.
And when you say value framework, you mean there's a requirement that we see some comparative effectiveness research or something?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We've done quite a bit of work in the value framework space. As a matter of fact, when we started doing that early in 2016, we were specifically looking at the Institute for Clinical and Economic Review and their value frameworks. And in that space, they were not looking at step therapy as much. It was constantly a complaint from patient groups that was a problem. And now they are, in the past couple of reports that they've issued, they have pulled back on that and said that insurers should not implement step therapy and fail first for specific patients.
Should not, or is that becoming, is that codified? Is that becoming law?
It's becoming law in many states, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Rich, where is your society on the sort of value proposition movement that we see a lot? Are we starting to see more and more of
Yeah, well,
in
I
the
think
industry?
when you look at regionally, since we cover a region and we're part of a national organization, is that this is a trend that is happening. You know, you mentioned special, tiering as well. When you look at the cost, $350,000 to put in a tier 4, tier 5, tier 6, patients cannot afford this. I mean, these numbers are astronomical if the prophylactic treatment is $40,000, $50,000 a month. So I think regardless of whether...
Sorry, the 40, 50 would be their, whose cost is that?
Yeah, so we're seeing throughout the country, and thankfully not as much here in New England, but for patients with hemophilia, they have to get prior authorizations to go through monthly. They have to order their factor monthly. You can't order it 3 months anymore or 6 months like it was. The prescriptions have to be there. And some of the patients are seeing that they're being put into certain specialty tier classing, so there's a 20% copayment on $40,000 a month. And that's unacceptable. I mean, we hear story after story on a national and even here locally of how do patients, I mean, do the math. I mean, we're not even talking about a mortgage to a home anymore. We're talking about 10 mortgages to 10 homes, and patients can't afford these types of things. So I think, when we look at trends, our organization is making sure patients are first. I think so often patients, as an advocacy organization, see that they're kind of in this volleyball match. You see patients trying to understand these very confusing landscapes, and it's our responsibility to make sure that throughout the 6 New England states that they're being heard. But we are seeing, these specialty tier laws go into place throughout the country. There was a national bill on a federal level that didn't get as much traction. So what we're trying to do is focus it more on a state level.
And what does it do? It limits the number of tiers you can have, or is there some cap on the patient's out-of-pocket expense?
Yeah. So the specialty tier bills that are out there nationally helps for those with rare, expensive chronic conditions to not go into these other tiering. So unlike when you go to CVS or Walgreens and you have a $10 prescription or copayment, it puts clotting factor into major medical versus pharmaceutical and helps to understand these types of things so patients are not having these astronomical costs into these tiering classifications. So it puts parameters around them.
So at the same time, though, right now on Beacon Hill, we have a situation where the group that manages state employees' health insurance is trying to save money by limiting the number of insurers that they do business with. But there's a Senate Oversight Committee hearing now planned next week where they say the main issue is rising pharmaceutical costs, and that's where we should be focusing. I know a lot of people want to push back on that, but when you see that tension, where is what's working to create a win-win situation like Bob was suggesting we should be working towards? Anybody?
Well, there's no doubt that rising pharmaceutical costs are a concern to payers. They are a concern to patients in as much as some of the extra cost is pushed off onto patients with out-of-pocket expenses increasing. And to the extent that they draw away from expenditures on other services patients rely upon, that's a concern. I think it's important to remember in the value proposition that there are 2 dimensions. There's the dimension of cost efficiency, but there's also the dimension of clinical effectiveness. And it's my hope that as this value proposition is implemented in Massachusetts through the structures of integrated primary care practices and accountable care organizations, that people will, at a more clinical and provider service delivery level, balance those 2 objectives in creating a value proposition that benefits patients.
Great. We have a couple of minutes left for questions. I can keep going, or is anybody jumping out of the... Hi. Could you speak really loudly? Thank you.
individuals who are participating in the trials. So I don't know if it's in your document about patient access for participation in, or reducing the barriers for access to clinical trial participation, but do you have any thoughts on that particular realm? Because if we get it right, we'll make sure that when we're testing our compounds, we're going to have a better sense of maybe which patients are responding better versus only those who can access the clinical trials. And so we're kind of taking a guess on how relevant it is.
And could I just ask you to introduce yourself real quick before?
Cherie Butts, Biogen.
Thank you.
Well, one of the things that has definitely come up in the clinical trial access space is one of the things that I addressed in my opening remarks, which was the ability to get to clinical trials, the ability to know about clinical trials. So we have a couple of partnerships that we're working on. One with Clara, which is actually based here in Boston, and they're helping us really help educate patients more in the clinical trial space, and they're actually providing care, online real support, not just like click and link to healthcare, to the .gov website, clinicaltrials.gov, but to really like get on the phone and help them navigate that space, which often their primary care physicians or even their specialist doctors do not have time to do and may not know about. That is one of the reasons for the development of patients' writing. One of the things that we're trying to address in doing that is to help a lot of these patients that just can't get there or can't have access or you cannot obtain those, because we know that is a barrier, especially in all the work that we've been doing in the value framework space, that part of the issues with coming up with those reports is not enough evidence yet, or the clinical trial wasn't big enough, or whatever. So those are one of the issues that we know is a problem. There's such a small percent of patients, and there's many patients out there who should be on them, and that will definitely help everyone.
Yeah, can I just make a quick comment on that? Sure. So I think when you talk about clinical trials, it is so exciting for anyone that represents a patient organization or as a patient themselves. It's an exciting time. There are so many bright minds in this room that are working on treatment. When I mentioned 27 years old in 1957, if treatment wasn't here, I would not be here right now. I would be dead. So the fact is that when we're looking ahead at treatment for all chronic conditions, gene therapy, especially for sub-Q injections, it's huge. But the biggest barrier that we're concerned about is how are patients going to have access to this if this is FDA approved? Are we going to look at more specialty tiering and step therapy and some of these other things that are affecting our community, but is it going to be really magnified in a way? And that's the fear. That's the conversations I think across the board is we can have the advancements, but how do we get patients to access them? How do we get better quality of life? How do we continue to navigate this very tricky situation when we look at advancements of care the next 10, 20, 30 years?
Thank you. Hi, what's your name, sir?
Hi, my name's Jason Cole. I'm with Bluebird Bio, and this is actually a question mainly for Richard to follow up on something you just mentioned. So my company is one of many companies in the field who's working on gene therapies, right, for rare diseases. And as you mentioned, there are a number of companies working on gene therapies for hemophilia. And so those potentially transformative therapies are going to be in the market in the next couple years. And so from a patient perspective and maybe an access perspective, what sort of excites you about these transformative therapies coming to market, and what sort of scares you about these therapies coming to market with respect to how, policymakers, insurers, companies are going to sort of deal with this new kind of paradigm of therapies that are coming?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And I'll just start off by saying that our community was told in the late 90s that gene therapy would hit the market by 2003, 2004, and that came and went. So it's a new generation, an exciting time when we're looking at the clinical data that's out there. I think what's exciting for any chronic condition when you talk about gene therapy is the quality of life. The thought of not having to navigate when you talk about hundreds of thousands of dollars or sticking needles in your arm on a prophylactic level, not having to go to the hospital and go through these barriers is exciting. I don't think anyone 20 years ago could imagine that in a couple of years we could be seeing these types of advancements come along. I think it comes down to the costs. We've been having a lot of conversations and are trying to educate insurance companies that there is going to be a cost here. And when you look at the overall objective of if someone costs $350,000 a year up to $1 million, what is gene therapy? Can patients, I think the bottom line is, can patients be involved, organizations, in terms of pricings of this, whether it's insurance companies or with pharmaceutical companies, to really have the end result, which is the quality of life?
One more question. Hi. Oh, you've got a mic in your hand. Yes.
Even works. Hi, I'm Leora Schiff with Altea Strategy Consulting, and I want to go back to a point I think you made about how the step therapy matches the base of the population. If you look at a disease population, maybe 70% of the population might be addressed with the initial treatment, but you have the 30% who wouldn't be. And so this is actually a question for Terry and Richard. Given that there are these subpopulations that won't be addressed, what are your organizations doing to help map out what these differences are? Because ultimately the way to resolve this would be through precision medicine. But in order to get there, we need to be able to characterize these patients. So are you working on doing registries to try to map this out, and how do you see this going forward?
Okay. Well, as an organization that's focused on access across the board in all disease states, one of the things that we are doing with Patients Rising University, we are starting a really strong data collection in this space to sort of know the patient populations that we personally are serving better and be able to talk about that more. But we
With
work
data
with,
they submit?
excuse me?
Their personal data.
Well, what they'll give us.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
right.
we don't go out.
Right.
What
Just
they'll
want to
give us.
clarify, yeah.
We have a collective series of how to gather data on, sometimes a lot of general data will really help. Like what they have, how old they are, what type of insurance they have. This can help you determine a lot of different things about what they're experiencing. But a lot of the disease-specific organizations are addressing those issues around specific patients. I mean, there are some that patients are, especially in the rheumatoid space, the patients are constantly having to change to continue with change their therapy or find a different therapy to continue with chronic illnesses, or getting thrown off. I mean, we have a patient that was in Maryland who ran a restaurant. He was on a therapy. All of a sudden he went to the pharmacy one day. They said, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's not on the formulary anymore. You're supposed to do this one." Or, no, it was actually they changed his amount. They said, "Oh, we're only going to approve you for this much drug instead of what you were taking, which was allowing you to work, take care of your father, run your restaurant, etc." And he spent an entire year fighting the insurance company to get the treatment he needed, living in pain, and constantly losing money, not able to take care of his father, had to hire another caregiver. And a lot of those things are not put into the formula of what we should be looking at for what it's costing patients for out-of-pocket expenses. I don't know. I know I answered your question and then went on a tangent, which I apologize for. I tend to do that. Sorry.
We know we need data. Data is what's going to drive change. So as a regional-based advocacy organization, we're part of the national organization that's looking at bleeding disorders. And there's a program with the Hemophilia Federation of America called Project Calls. And as a regional organization, anytime we hear an insurance barrier, we refer them in and are tracking it and mapping it to make sure that we understand. And because of this, we're actually working with legislators in Rhode Island for a prior authorization bill, because we're seeing that prior authorizations are leading to delayed care, and patients monthly are waiting between 3 days to 5 days to get their medicine with Blue Cross and Blue Shield. So I think it's some of these things that we need this data to address this. I don't think that all legislation is going to make sure that every single situation, but I think it's our job to make sure that we're, at least collecting this data and continuing to do it.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Martha, and to all the panelists. That was wonderful. Next, I'd like to welcome our second panel to the stage to discuss the Life Sciences Initiative, past, present, and future. As you'll see, this panel brings perspective from each part of the life sciences ecosystem: universities, academic research hospitals, biotech, and the Life Sciences Center. Together, they can give us the clearest picture of why the Life Sciences Initiative was such a great success and why it must be reauthorized. So come on up, panelists. I have the pleasure of being the moderator of this panel. All right, why don't we get right into it? Why don't we start the discussion? We'll start down at your end, Dr. Collins, and work our way back. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your organization and how perhaps the Life Science Initiative in the past has helped you grow into the world-class institution or organization that you are today. So let's start with Dr. Collins.
At the time of the Nobel moment, there was a conversation between the Nobel laureate and Craig Mello and the governor about what Massachusetts might do, how we could take advantage of the fact that this great discovery had been made. And at the time, a decision was made to invest capital monies, about half of which went to the University of Massachusetts. And I have to say, at the time, I was quite surprised that people were concerned that we'd want to invest in the university, because in most major initiatives across the country where life sciences investments were being made, state universities were getting a significant portion of that investment. We worked very closely with the life sciences staff and created a facility. We received $90 million in Worcester. We created a facility that now houses an RNA institute, a gene therapy institute, and has been the locus for much of great science discovery that will result in a drug from Alnylam before too long. And sorry?
This year we hope.
This year we hope, yes, all of us hope. And has spurred the development of a number of biotech companies. 8 companies have come out of the science just over the last few years in Worcester. It has also allowed us, investment in the life sciences has also allowed us to create a facility in Fall River. We have an entity, MassBiologics, which is in, most people think the medical school is in Worcester only, but we're also in Mattapan and Fall River. And in collaboration with Senator Rodericks, we now have a facility in Fall River that is creating vector. And that vector, we actually had a new IND approved yesterday with Voyager Therapeutics, which is a company that came out of the science of the medical school following the life sciences moment, and now for a new IND for a Parkinson's drug. So I think you can see an investment in education and research, in capital formation across the Commonwealth, and now in the establishment of multiple companies which would actually provide drugs that change the course of history of disease.
Thank you, Dr. Collins. Laurie, do you want to talk a little bit about how the Life Science Initiative has played a role in the success and growth of Alnylam Pharmaceuticals?
Happy to do that. Good morning, everyone, and it just was great to hear patient representatives start off the morning. And as Dr. Collins indicated, our company, Alnylam, was founded in 2002 based on the Nobel Prize winning science by Professors Fire and Mello. And we actually had the privilege of celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Nobel Prize in Kendall Square, and Craig gave a fantastic talk. So that early work was done in worms, and then went on to mammalian work at MIT, and we were founded. And you know, for us, what has the Life Sciences Center and the initiative meant? We've had some serious ups and downs along the way. We've invested $2 billion in privately raised capital to advance RNAi as a new class of medicines and to conquer the really astounding delivery challenges. We were thrilled when the center was created. We have had about $6 million in awards over the years of 2014 to 2017 associated with creating new jobs in the Commonwealth. During that time, we created about 500 new jobs. But the serious moment for me with the Life Science Center has to do with bipartisanship in the legislature and kind of the faith and goodwill in the Commonwealth. We needed to make a decision about where to build a drug substance manufacturing facility. And for those of us who were in early biotech startups at the turn of the century, most people weren't thinking about Massachusetts as a place to create a manufacturing facility, either for cost or permitting or other issues, and there were such strong incentives to go to other places. And we looked at about 50 locations, but we were really drawn to a location in Norton, and we wanted to try to put the Norton proposal on a footing that would come close to what we were being wooed with to Rhode Island or North Carolina or Ireland, and met with Travis, and because we didn't know what would happen with the initiative and the funding for it after 2018, we needed to have some faith in one another. But they gave us a letter of intent, and we talked about it in earnest, and we felt that we could put faith in that proposal and have broken ground and are building a drug substance manufacturing plant. When it's fully operational, it will employ about 200 people. We think that Metro South has a remarkable and terrific workforce, and it's really exciting to see manufacturing occurring in the Commonwealth close to where our process science groups and regulatory groups are, so that we can advance drugs more quickly to patients in need and, for example, get those living with hemophilia a subcutaneous therapy, get those living with hereditary ATTR amyloidosis, which is the disease we're first addressing with our most advanced drug. It has no approved therapy, so we want to get those drugs to patients faster.
Thank you, Laurie. And Sandy, as the CEO of the best pediatric care center in the world, how has the Life Science Center, and we can say that there's no one from Cincinnati Children's or CHOP here today, right? Because the second and third best, they're great organizations as well. But Sandy, how has the Life Science Initiative played a role in making Boston Children's the best, voted the best pediatric care center in the country?
Thanks, Bob. I'm glad you said it and you didn't make me have to say it.
We were all thinking it.
Thank you. I just want to mention that, clearly as a Boston Children's Hospital and as a pediatric center, I think probably people don't recognize that we also have the largest pediatric research program in pediatrics in the world. And so I want to start with the importance of the continuum and emphasize how important we are here today because of the decades of investment, the decades of resilient, dedicated, passionate researchers in both our medical schools, our hospitals, our universities that got us to this point, that have made both discoveries, have had successes and failures, but have stayed with it to get us to a point where we can not only understand disease better, we understand the basic biology of disease, but we can now translate that, we can take it to clinical trials, and we can take it to commercialization and to patients. So I think I just want to make sure that we never lose sight of that whole continuum of basic discovery and basic science that has to be there to fuel this pipeline and fuel this pump. Second thing is to really celebrate some of the successes. We talked a lot about gene therapy. Some of those successes, whether it's we have 9 gene therapy trials alone going on at Children's, and many more in the pipeline. We are not just treating disease, we are actually curing it. With our severe combined immune deficiency, a failed a trial back in the 90s, again, was with perseverance and resilience, a redo of the understanding of how to approach that. We now, in 2010, kicked off another trial 7 years later. Children are now not just thriving, they are cured of their immune deficiency. So those are the unbelievable successes, and we have one after another. And the last thing, I think, is a huge shout out to the MLSC and what it has meant for a place like Boston Children's. 2 major grants, one in our stem cell therapy program that really allowed for an improvement in our zebrafish facility that has now led to a new drug for black fan diamond disease, a terrible hematologic disorder. And the second one, investing in our human neuron core, where we literally can take patients with neurological diseases, convert them to literally a disease in a dish. And now in multiple labs, whether it's rare epilepsy and looking for screening for drugs for rare epilepsy, whether it's in partnership with MGH around arresting some of the conditions with ALS, or working on autism and really going all the way back to the core. These are really what we are now using those incredible investments to continue to advance the care and improve not just treatment of disease, but hopefully cures. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. And Travis, how has the Mass Life Science Center played a role in your life? We call that a softball.
I can pay my mortgage. I guess first and foremost, I do want to echo a comment that Chancellor Collins began with, which is it's truly an honor and a privilege for me to serve in this capacity and serve you and serve the community and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in this capacity. This is an opportunity that and a responsibility that I don't take lightly. And I can say that it's a responsibility and an opportunity that no one on my staff takes lightly. So first and foremost, we're honored to be here and to work with all of you. Secondly, I'd like to give a very warm shout out to the folks here from the House and the Senate and everyone that's within the administration. Probably the thing that I was worried the most about coming into this role was I'm not a political guy. I've never really spent a whole heck of a lot of time thinking about politics. But over the past 2.5, 3 years, I've become so proud to be a resident and citizen of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Each and every one of you should know that your senators and representatives are curious, hardworking, diligent. They are teachers, because each and every city and town in the Commonwealth has a story and has a history. And it's a very powerful history that we should be proud of. And each one of your senators and reps, they know this history and they teach this history, and it has allowed us to think about our mission in a regionalized way, to plug and play different elements of the life sciences ecosystem across the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That is our mission and our vision. We are committed to ensuring that this ecosystem spreads throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So thank you to the senators and reps for your partnership and your friendship and your challenges to us as an organization in advancing this ecosystem. Third, to everyone up here, each and every one of your organizations has played a very passionate and dedicated an integral role in advancing this ecosystem. Alnylam was the first company I think I sat down with. My father-in-law died of amyloidosis 19 years ago. So to have that be my very first meeting, to meet with a company that was working on the very first treatment for that disease was very emotional. Chancellor Collins, for those of you who have not been to Worcester recently, please do not pass go. Go directly to Worcester. Central Massachusetts has turned the corner. It is the second largest city in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the third largest city in New England, and it is an extraordinary place to live, work, and play. And one of the anchor institutions there is UMass Medical, and under your leadership, Chancellor, it has proven to be a formidable research institution globally for the life sciences. And of course, Boston Children's, you guys have taken care of my kids for years. But it is, within Boston Children's, you see this paradigm of how basic research, translational research, clinical care is all taking place on site within one facility. And you also see what we do best in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and what we've really tried to encourage and fund through the Life Sciences Center, which is fully integrated collaboration. And that's something that you feel within the halls of Boston Children's, and it's something that we do better, I would submit, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts than any other state and perhaps any other region in the world in this industry. So I can't say enough about what this organization and what this institution has done for me, for us, and what I believe for the state.
Thank you, Travis. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge Assistant Secretary of A&F, Dominic Ayano, is in the room. Dominic, wave. He's also one of the co-chairs of the Mass Life Sciences Board of Directors. So we want to make sure that you hear what we're going to say next. And everybody in this room, I think, agrees. We're going to talk about what's next. What is it that we want to see the Life Sciences Initiative look like? Why is it so important that the legislature continues to go down this road? Many people have said to me, well, do we need to do it anymore? You've recruited 19 out of the top 20 big pharma companies to come here. You know, picking winners and losers is bad, and handouts are horrible. You shouldn't do well, this worked. This worked. And when you're on top, what do you need to do to stay on top? You don't want to move backwards. What are some of the things we should be thinking about? What are some of the challenges around workforce development, et cetera? What should we be doing to make sure that we stay on top? And do you want to start with that, Travis, or do you want me to go down the other end?
I have some.
Okay, so let's go to Dr. Collins again.
You guys start.
You know, it seems to me that it's so self-evident that I get a little worried. If I just look at this audience, and I look at the entities that are represented in the room, I look at the ecostructure that exists across the Commonwealth in educational institutions, research institutions, and companies in their development and in their formation, and you look at the fact that we're the envy of the world when it comes to science and the development of biologics that can really change our patients' lives. It seems so evident to me that we would want to do whatever we could to continue the advancement of this sector. If you look at we feel an enormous responsibility in the university across the Commonwealth, because in many ways we are the gateway to the economic development of this Commonwealth. We educate those who are going to continue to be in Massachusetts into the future. We really need to be educating the folks that are going to be working in your companies. And one of the things we're spending a lot of time doing, so as you say, Bob, and thank you for your leadership on this, one of the ways that we can be better into the future is to have a much more active dialogue between each of our institutions, much enhanced communications, how we can better educate the workforce of tomorrow, how we can collaborate on the research enterprise, how we can work more closely on the clinical trials, how we can create facilities like our cryo-EM facility in Worcester, where we have a microscope, a cryo-EM, that is the envy of the Northeast. There isn't another one all the way out to Rochester or into Pennsylvania. We work collaboratively among our institutions, our own Harvard, WPI, and your companies to be able to utilize this facility. It was funded by investment from the Life Science Center, Harvard, UMass, and Howard Hughes. And the fact that we come together to have this facility, which is, you know, almost fully utilized now, we're starting to think about how we expand it into the future, and to encourage the legislators to understand that it's not really picking a winner. I've heard that, you know, we're not really about picking winners when it comes to industries, but it's really doing what should be self-evident to all of us, which is to continue to make further advancement in this very critical aspect of all of our lives, our health. And the ability for us, you know, hope, research brings hope to the human condition. And the discoveries that come from our companies, your companies, give our patients hope. And if you try to wake up in the morning without hope, it's not worth it. And when you have that hope, and we are in this place at this time, we have the opportunity to continue to invest so that we can change the course, the history of disease for our patients. seems to me there's no higher calling.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Collins. Laurie, what are some of your thoughts as we move forward?
Well, moving forward, I would say there's so much work left to be done. I talked to Elm Island was founded in 2002, so 16 years later, we're hopeful of our first drug approval in a new class of medicine that harnesses RNAi interference, a natural process in the body. And it's tremendously exciting. It means that conditions that could not be treated or potentially create functional cures for conditions that were impossible before are now possible. And we're not the only company pursuing this great technology. There are other companies in the Commonwealth and elsewhere bringing these new medicines forward. And I think that so much has been accomplished here in a collaborative way between researchers in the lab, translational medicine occurring in the universities and medical schools, and in early stage companies, tremendous networking and collaboration between funding sources and venture capitalists and grant providers, and then the risk takers who want to translate that into a commercial drug that can get to patients living either with hemophilia or hereditary ATTR amyloidosis or porphyria or some of these other very, very devastating conditions. And so I just urge the legislature to continue the great work and leading work that you did, bold work that you did in passing the first initiative, to renew it this year, and with a strong focus on workforce development, paying attention to inclusion and diversity, which I think is hugely important for young people making career decisions and making educational choices. And then also for some of the capital needs, so that we can use big data and use the knowledge that's now accessible, whether it's from registries or the medical records that are at last nearly we're getting to an electronic medical record state, so that we can help humans live better and longer lives.
Thank you, Laurie. And Sandy, how about you from a hospital standpoint?
So, I think all the things that we've had successes on one point I didn't make in my comments was the importance of partnerships across this continuum, and especially with some of the wonderful biotech companies that we have in this community. We would not be where we are if it weren't for either the sponsorship, the collaboration, or the capabilities of the companies that we have partnered with. And so having a thriving ecosystem across this whole continuum, from the basic science through all those steps to viable, really well-functioning and companies that can maintain and keep the very best people in their companies is going to be continuing to be critical. And Michael and I were talking about this. Our competition is not asleep, whether it's mine specifically or yours or our Commonwealth's. Everyone is looking at us. We are the ecosystem that is really the envy of this country and the world, and we are constantly being poached with packages that are absolutely outrageous. Michael and I were talking about two different ones, a 30 million and a 40 million. Some we can keep for an awful lot less, because of the ecosystem that's here, because of the collaboration across institutions and organizations, and because they believe they're in an environment that is supportive. So I think that is really something we have to continue to pay attention to.
Thank you. And Travis, you're going to bat cleanup on this one, and then we're going to get into the Legislator of the Year award. So what do you see moving forward?
Yeah, so just a couple of thoughts. In one, we're going to stick to our knitting on academic and workforce development. You're absolutely right. The human capital dimension of the life sciences is part of what's powered this ecosystem for as long as it has. So we will continue to invest in internships. We fund over 500 internships a year. We launched 2 years ago a high school internship program. We're now clocking at about 150 high school internships that we make available across the ecosystem. We invest in middle schools, high school, voc tech schools, community colleges, private colleges, and of course, our very important state university system. We believe that the human capital dimension is something that we have to continue to lean in on, so that's one. Second, thank you for that slow pitch softball on diversity. We're going to continue to invest in early stage companies, but we believe, and the data show, and the data have been clear for a long time, that this industry is challenged by not having enough women entrepreneurs. At the end of the year, we launched our Mass Next Gen initiative, and I'd like to recognize my staff member, Jennifer Griffin, who's in the middle of the room, our VP of Industry Relations, who's leading this initiative. But we've set aside $1 million over the next 5 years to invest in women-controlled companies and helping them grow and grow to scale. We have one company that's already matching our funding. As some of you in this room know, I've already approached you to ask for a little bit more money to help grow this initiative. But just to give you a sense of hunger, this initiative was announced and opened 2 weeks ago. We already have 22 live applications of women-controlled companies in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that want to participate in receiving not only just the non-dilutive funding, but also, importantly, the executive coaching that comes along with that funding. So we're very excited to grow this initiative going forward into the future. And lastly, I'll mention we believe that Massachusetts can be the state that is fully integrated, where you can go from basic research all the way through not just to commercialization, but to production, all within the confines of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where we're still a little soft. And this is not just the state of Massachusetts, but frankly, this is a global issue. Given how the number of modalities and the diversity of modalities for some of these compounds, therapies, and cures have evolved, particularly over the past 10 years, the industry in general is soft in manufacturing. So we're going to put a lot of our time, attention, and research into process innovation, equipment innovation, and capacity. We hear too often, particularly from the smaller companies, from researchers and PIs at the research institutions, that they're having to wait 18 to 24 months just to get a compound or a therapy into a CDMO or a CMO. That's too long. It's too long for our patients to have to wait. It's too long for these researchers to have to wait. The community is waiting for these therapies and cures, and we can't have a bottleneck like biomanufacturing stand in the way of delivering great cures and great science to our patients. So we're going to lean in on biomanufacturing to ensure that this state can provide the capacity and the innovation necessary for this area to grow. So those are just three of the things that we're going to be focusing on going forward in the future.
I think that's wonderful. And again, the comments as it relates to diversity and inclusion. Look at this panel. In Massachusetts, we lead by example, and we don't care what sex you are, where you come from, or what you look like. When it comes to curing diseases, it takes the best and brightest of everywhere to try to make this happen. And as a cystic fibrosis dad, I came to this industry trying to work on a way to cure my kid. And it takes everybody to solve these complex medical issues. So we're proud in Massachusetts to lead on that. That was like a little soapbox statement. I got a little excited there. But that's what we do in Massachusetts, folks. We lead by example, and we're going to continue to do so. So how about a big round of applause for our panelists? Thank you very much. Yep.
If I may just make one last comment, I'd just like to recognize and thank Bob Coughlin and his leadership at MassBio. No.
Stop it.
You're the lifeblood of this industry, Bob. Your energy, your vision, and your sense of humor, and your partnership and friendship.
Thank you, Travis.
You've just been great, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you. Get out of here. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Thank you. All right. Now the moment we've all been waiting for, but before we get to that, I saw Senator Rodericks was here and Senator Boncory. Any other senators join us? I see stand up. Barbara L'Italian and Senator Mike Rush, you're all the way back there. How are you, shipmate? How about a big round of applause for these guys for joining us? And then moving over to the House. How many more House members have joined us? Please stand up. All the House members, stand up again. All of you, stand up. Thank you very much, guys. This is amazing. Chairman McMurtry, you look wonderful. You represent the best district in the House. Thank you very much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment we've all been waiting for. And I'm so excited for this award, and I'm also excited to have last year's recipient of the MassBio Legislator of the Year Award winner with us. Leader Mariano, you won it last year. And this trend of former recipients attending the next year. We didn't even write that into the bylaws of the award, but now we're gonna. So thank you, Mr. Leader, for being here, and thank you to all of the members of the legislature that are here. It's our tradition at MassBio Policy Breakfast to recognize legislators or policymakers who have been strong advocates for our industry. The 2018 Legislator of the Year Award goes to a man who has consistently stood up to ensure the legislature does what is right for both patients and industry. Senator Michael Rodericks has been a long friend of mine and remains one of the smartest people at the State House. He's up there with the rest of you people that are here from the State House today. I just said, that was in the script. I wouldn't have put that in there. That was, no, but Michael, you are. You're one of the brightest people serving in public office, and we appreciate that. You know, he's a former colleague of mine in the House, and he was the founding co-chair of the Biotech Caucus, which was founded to help our industry educate other legislators and staff about the impact biotech companies have on patients, the economy, and the healthcare system. And I believe that was 11 years ago when that was started. And throughout your time in the legislature, Senator, you've always taken a measured view on every issue and brought a business person's frame of mind to decision making. And I think I can speak for everyone here when I say thank you for always sticking to your principles and continuing to stand up for what's right. It's my pleasure to honor you on behalf of the entire MassBio community, MassBio's 2018 Legislator of the Year Award. Please join me in congratulating Senator Mike Rodericks. Come on, stand up. Stand up for him and stretch your legs. Wait, we're going to do a picture. Come here.
Wow, that's a nice one.
We like when you hang it right to the right side of your door when you enter the office.
Anywhere you want it, anywhere you want it. And I know you and your team spend plenty of time in my office, welcomely, so you'll see it. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Bob. And to you and your team, John Heffernan and Billy McDermott and Jan Rose and all the friends. As I look out in this audience, I think there's literally friends of mine at every single table out there. And it's more than just friends. It's been really almost like a family atmosphere now after all these years, over a decade of working with all of you. It was a lot of fun 10 years ago working with Governor Patrick and Secretary Bielecki and Susan Winder Bannister as we did Life Science One. Now it's going to be fun working with Governor Baker and Travis and Jay Ash and Dominic as we do Life Science 2. And we really should announce it, by the way, at Bio in Boston, right? I mean, we did it last time. Yeah, let's hear it. So that's a challenge on all of us to get it done. And we got to get her done and pass the legislation. And to Chancellor Collins, thank you and your team. We do in my district in Fall River have Mass Biologics. It's amazing what goes on there, you know. I tell everyone, you know, my interest in this industry really, it goes back decades now when I started my undergraduate career as a biology major. I didn't finish as a biology major. I started as a biology major because, you know, my dad would always tell me, how are you going to take over the business? What are you going to do with a biology degree? You know, so I ended up getting, you know, my undergraduate degree in accounting, but the science and the fascination never left me. And then when I had the opportunity in the legislature to work with all of you, you just rekindled that spark in the science. And the days of the Biotech Caucus, where we would have, twice a month, we'd have Biotech Caucus meetings. Once in the State House, where we bring many of you in to talk about policy initiatives and tax policy and workforce development issues and you know, how we can help you grow and prosper. Then once a month we'd get out of the State House and we'd see the science and put on the lab coats and look in the microscopes. And just, to me, that was the highlight really of my career in the legislature, is getting to know all of you, getting to work with all of you, and to keep that spark and that kindle of the science and what you do every day alive in me. So thank you very, very much for this honor. I look forward to you and your team, Bob, you know, back and forth in my office as we work through the machinations of Life LS2, and look forward to seeing all of you at Bio come June. Thank you all. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Senator. Thank you so much. So much. Thank you for your continued support, and we look forward to working with you in the Senate to pass thoughtful legislation that will benefit patients moving forward. And I also want to acknowledge again Chairman Wagner and Senator Spilker, who are the co-chairs of the Biotech Caucus. I said it earlier, but they're here as well. So how about another big round of applause for them? So important. So important. And again, on time. It's a wrap. This is our end of our 2018 MassBio Policy Leadership Breakfast. Thank you for joining us today and continuing to be engaged in this conversation. We couldn't do it without the support of our sponsors. So another huge thanks to Alexion, Alchemies, Amgen, Bio, Biogen, Bluebird, BMS, EMD Serono, Fisher Scientific, Ipsen, J&J, Pfizer, Shire, and Sanofian. And thank you all what you do each and every day for patients. So if there's any senators and reps still in the House, please come up to the front. We want to do a photo that is suitable for tweeting. So come on up. Thank you very much, folks.